Well, hello there, my friends. This is your boy, Garrett J. White, and welcome to the Warrior Wealth Podcast, and this is episode number 6. 6 episodes. We have been going down this journey together. We started off with our first episode, which you haven't seen before. Head on over to warriorwealthnow.com. You can check out all the videos, all the audios, all the text, all the readable formats, show notes, etc. Any week, every week over at warriorwealthnow.com. You can check out on the pilot where I explained who I was and why this show actually matters. But then from there, for the next 4 shows, we rolled through the following. We went through the conversation of power in our first week. Secondly, we followed up with production. Third, we went with profit. And fourth, we went with the idea of protection. So our 4 core shows were preceded by a pilot. Now we are on here in number 6. And here in number 6, we're going to come all the way back to the conversation of power. But you might ask yourself, why the fuck should I listen to you, Garrett? Why should I listen to this show? Well, you can Google my name, Garrett J. White. You can check it out at Wake Up Warrior. You can head to Warrior on Fire, the podcast, at warrioronfire.com. You can check out our podcast, Date Your Wife. You can check out our podcast, Warrior Week. You can go to warriorweek.com. Well, fuck, dude. You can find out anything and everything. You can go check out the book, Warrior Week, Warrior Book. You can check out the new book we're just releasing here in the next couple of weeks called Be the Man. So there's a lot of history on who I am, but who I am doesn't really matter. What really matters is why should you listen to this show? Well, here's the deal. This show has been created for 2 reasons. One, as a message into the night for businessmen. The conversation of wealth and the conversation of having it all and the conversation of money as a businessman when it comes to investing, managing your finances, building legacy, etc., is a conversation that has been ignored. Businessmen have been thrown into a bucket of assumptions that they operate the same as everyone, including executives and high-level salaried employees. The businessmen somehow are the same as everyone else. Yet, entrepreneurism is the furthest thing from being a normal human being. You have to be just about, well, a fucking psychopath to choose to go down this path and to be successful at it. Hence the reason why I am in this industry, in this position of being an entrepreneur. But over the years, there's been a lot of confusion for me. A lot of confusion for many men. I train thousands and thousands and thousands of businessmen from 27 different countries. And the topic of investing and the topic of money is something that constantly is coming up. Not just in the topic, how do I make more money, but it's how do I make more money, how do I keep more money, and how do I grow more money? And so those are the 3 big pillars that this show is based upon. Our message is directly to businessmen. And if that's you, well, fantastic. Welcome to the show. And today, we're going to dive into this topic of power. Now, what is power? What is power in general? We've discussed this in the previous episodes, but today I'm going to discuss power from a different angle. I'm going to talk about it from the following, and that is your emotional IQ. Now, this is not a topic I came up with myself. Years ago, if you've listened to the show, you know that one of my original mentors inside of this game of wealth and prosperity and creating businesses and investing, etc., was a man by the name of Robert T. Kiyosaki. I'll be grateful the rest of my life for that man and for his willingness 20 years ago, 2 decades ago, to deploy a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad that changed my life forever. This book opened up inside of my world a new possibility that I could not see before. And this is where we're going to start our first little pit stop in this topic of power, is we're going to look at that power itself is linked up directly to perspective. Now, I'm part of a couple other programs, myself as a student, and inside of being part of those programs as a student, one of the things that I have gotten to experience was the following, which is I've gotten to experience perspective across lots of different fronts. Fronts of individuals who make almost no money to individuals who make hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I don't spend any time right now with billionaires, but I am certain that will happen in the future because that's where I will be as a 60-year-old, which means even if the only person I spend time with as a billionaire is myself, well, then I'll spend time with myself. So I'm 41 years old, and over the years, I've invested in a lot of programs, a lot of masterminds, but there's a couple programs I'm part of where the only way that you can get in is if you economically make a certain amount of money. So not only do you have to be an entrepreneur, but you have to be an entrepreneur who also makes a certain amount of money. Now, as part of a program called Strategic Coach, I think it's a fantastic program. It's created by a man by the name of Dan Sullivan. If you haven't checked out Strategic Coach, I would encourage you to. It's a fantastic program for entrepreneurs. It's all over the world, so Regardless of where you are, you can get plugged in. I've sent, 40, 50 people who are part of that program now because of my direct influence. And I got there because of a friend of mine back in the day by the name of Garrett B. Gunderson, author of Killing Sacred Cows. He and I were together in the financial services world for a number of years. And he said, hey, you should go check out the strategic coach thing. And so I did. Also, my buddy and partner in crime here in Warrior Wealth, Michael G. Isom of the Vault AIS system. Again, part of Strategic Coach. So I'm sitting there at Strategic Coach Zone. One of the things the Strategic Coach does is they divide you up based upon how much money you make. And a lot of programs I'm part of are like this, but I'm going to use Strategic Coach as an example. So you go in and there's an income requirement. So if you don't make $100,000, you cannot be part of the program. So if you are a small business owner who makes $50,000, $60,000, $80,000, they do not let you participate in the program. If you make $100,000, you can qualify, and you have to document this with your accountant. So it cannot be like, Dumb and Dumber IOU fucking notes in a lunch pail that you deliver to them and say, here you go. You have to actually get a letter from your accountant that verifies and justifies that you make $100,000. Now, the next leap from this is $500,000. So there's a gap. So between $100,000 and $500,000, they put these individuals into a section. Then they take from $500,000 and above, they put them into, or to $1 million, they put them in a section. And then they have a section $1 million above, right? So there's these three brackets, which is either don't make $100,000, so you can't be part of the program. The second option is you make $100,000 to $500,000, so you're in that level of the program. And the next one is you make $1 million or more, right? So there's kind of this gap play between 0 to 1, 1 to 5, 5 to $1 million, and $1 million plus. Now, I didn't really understand why that was at first because I qualified into, the first group. I was making at the time when I started Strategic Coach here, this was like I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years, so this was probably my fourth year in the game, so 13 years ago when I first started with Coach. So I go in and I'm sitting down in Santa Monica, California, which is where I happen to have my meeting. And I sit down and we have the name tags on, and there's this guy sitting next to me, and his name is Bob, right? Bob. But he looks super familiar. I'm like, how do I recognize this guy named Bob? I'm like, why do I feel like I know who this guy is? And I was also getting this inclination in my mind that he was linked up to Mark Victor Hansen. Now, at the time, there were a lot of people who I was following when I first started down this path. I invested in just about everything I could possibly find. I became a fucking sponge. You got to remember, in college, I was a guy who read less than 5 books. I read 5 books, and I graduated with a degree, obviously not in heart surgery. All right? I graduated with a degree in kickball. And PE, physical education, pedagogy was a professional name. It's like calling yourself as a garbage man, a sanitation engineer. It's just a fancy way of saying you fucking graduated in kickball. No offense to all my PE teachers out there. I consider myself to be the highest paid PE teacher in the world because of, that's my degree. That's my credentials. That's my certification there. So nonetheless, as I'm sitting there and I'm studying and I'm learning and I'm growing, there was topics that I was studying. 1 Minute Millionaire. I was studying these products and programs by a guy by the name of Robert Allen and another man by the name of Mark Victor Hansen, right? Most people who read Rich Dad Poor Dad, they get into real estate, which of course is what I did. So I got into real estate. I thought that was the only path. I don't do a ton with real estate except for buy the commercial properties that my businesses are located in, my salons, etc. But not a big passion for me. Not saying you shouldn't do it. Not saying that there was anything wrong with what Robert Allen or Mark Victor Hansen or anybody was teaching or sharing or guiding over the years. So I'm sitting there next to Robert Allen, but his tag says Bob, and we go to the bathroom. I'm on a break. He's in a urinal next to me. I look over at him, and he looks at me, and it's that weird moment where you're like, two dudes standing in a bathroom at a urinal, and you're looking at each other like, fuck, do I make eye contact? What do I do here? I'm stressing out right now. Should I talk to this guy? What do I do? I don't know. So I didn't say anything, and I was feeling all weird because my brain actually clicked in, and I was like, holy shit, standing right there with my cock in my hand, pissing, I have this moment of awakening, and I realized that Bob Allen is Robert Allen. And you're like, shit, dude, that's why you're a PE teacher, son. So I'm sitting there and I have this realization. So we go back in and we sit down at the tables, and one of the things they would do at the beginning of the programs is they would have everybody share, and they called this process slithering, which is you would share insights and vision. And we happened to be in this course, but Robert Allen, little did I know, was repeating the course because he had missed his class. Robert was way over $1 million in income. I, on the other hand, was not. I was around 200, 250 or something at the time. So Robert's sitting down, and we're all sharing our big vision, our big 5-year vision, and then our lifetime vision. And everybody gets a chance. They stand up. They have 1 minute. They share their vision. So people are sharing, right? And the whole room is filled with businessmen who have maybe, 2 or 3 employees at the time, and they're doing between 200 to 300,000, 400,000, maybe max around like 450. Which again is very good. I'm not taking away from that being amazing. And if that's you and you're in that section, good for you. Most small businesses exist within that $100,000 to $500,000 range anyway. So I was sitting there, and Robert stands up, and I share, and then Robert shares, right? And I don't even remember what the fuck I shared. It was pointless, whatever I shared, because I don't remember it. But I'm standing there, and Robert Allen gets up, and he starts using the words billions. And I'm sitting there, been an entrepreneur less than 5 years. Remember, 5 years before, I'm coaching 7th grade girls PE, and I'm getting notes from the girls telling me they cannot participate in class today because it's their period. But not only has it been their period today, they've been on their menstrual cycle for like 2 straight months, giving me handwritten notes, not from their mom, but from themselves. But I can't do anything about it. I just have to accept this bullshit and let them sit on the side. And the whole time I'm sitting there, I hate my fucking life. Why am I doing this? How did I think this was going to be a good idea to be a PE teacher? I want to coach athletes, and that's it. Then I found out I didn't want to do that. I love coaching. I just didn't want to coach athletes. I wanted to coach businessmen, and I wanted to work and guide. But I didn't even know I wanted to coach businessmen until I became a businessman, was a businessman for 15 years before I started deciding that it might help guys figure some stuff out that I had been struggling with. So Robert stands up, and he makes this point. He says, I want to build, and he uses billions. And I'm sitting there, and I cannot even fathom what the fuck he is talking about. Like, he is sharing a vision that is so big that it leaves me feeling weak and small. Like, I felt less powerful sitting listening to his vision. Now, had I not known who Robert Allen was, I'd have been like, dude, shut the fuck, sit down. Come on. But I knew who Robert Allen was. I had studied his stuff. I had gone to his events. I'd gone to a ton of his events. I probably invested $75,000 over the years into programs by that point, into events he and Mark Victor Hansen have been putting on with Wealth. Bought all their books, studied it, no money down, like everything. Like I would buy and read everything I could possibly get my fucking hands on, unlike what I did in college. So I'm sitting there, and Robert shares this, and he sits down. But the crazier part was that he was dead serious. And in my mind, I'm like, who is this fucking joker? Who is this joker? Like, I'm thinking billions? Come on. And right there, for the very first time, I was exposed as to why programs like Strategic Coach separate entrepreneurs based upon income. Now, we do the same thing inside of our Warrior Brotherhood in our programs. It's separated based upon entrepreneur and intrapreneur. It's what entrepreneurs are employees. I call them entrepreneurs because you can be actively involved in another entrepreneur's business and absolutely dominate, build massive wealth and empires inside of that. I'm not saying that you cannot. I have done that myself for 4 years. Like, it is possible for you to do this. But nonetheless, like, the game itself was truly driven to entrepreneurism because that's what I am and that's who I am. So I'm sitting there, though, and it's divided, and I'm looking at this for the very first time, that the perspective that Robert Allen had based upon his experience gave him power. See, he had a perspective that I did not have. You got to remember, 4 years previous, I'm a PE teacher and a football coach. 4 years previous for Robert Allen, he's building real estate empires in the millions and hundreds of millions. He runs a $100-200 million education company a year. He's written all these best-selling books. Like, he's just gone fucking crazy. Like, what was I doing? I was a PE teacher collecting notes from girls in 7th grade who told me they couldn't go to class because they were on their menstrual cycle. Like, my perspective was the limiter of my possibility. And as we talk about this idea of power, this is why you will watch the most successful entrepreneurs you will ever meet, the most successful businessmen you will ever meet are men who invest in perspective. They don't look for people to solve their problems for them. They look for perspective. Now, let's look at this from a second story. So I was sitting at an event also around the same time as a couple years later, speaking event in Las Vegas, Nevada. They were teaching us how to speak. The Better Platform speaker. Shit, what was the name of the guy whose event I was at? Super good smile, tall, just got married. Shit, I can't even remember his name. Anyway, so we're at his event, and we're having this conversation. He's sharing from stage, and he says, I want you to know the information may be in the room, but the deals happen in the hallway. And I sat there, like, with crickets. I was kind of like, what the fuck? What is he? Dude, we're in the room, like, we're sitting here having a conversation. And at that time, I was going to an event about every 3 weekends. About every third weekend, I was at an event for 2 to 3 days. It was a minimum of $10,000. Like, I was investing. What I didn't understand I was investing in was the most powerful asset available to me in my arsenal as an entrepreneur, which was perspective. So here I am sitting at this event. My mind says the value in the gold is in the room. That's what I'm thinking. And yet the man that runs the event is standing up on stage and he's telling me what? He's telling me the following. He's saying, Garrett, the value is yes inside this room, but the deals are done in the hallway during the breaks and at night and before the event starts. Now, what had I been doing? Well, I had been disappearing during the breaks. I'd been disappearing in the morning. I'd been disappearing at night. I wasn't socializing. I wasn't networking. I wasn't connecting. I wasn't hanging out with anyone. What was I doing? I was disappearing to my hotel room. So here I am. My perspective tells me that the power play is to be in the room, that the answer that I was looking for was actually in the room, which was true to a certain level. But the bigger perspective I was being taught was that the deals were actually being done in the hallway. What the fuck? Like, this was totally foreign to me. Like, I did not have eyes to see nor ears to hear. I could not understand this at all. I was like, what do you mean by this? Now, I would later come to find out this was exactly true. You got information inside the room. You got inspiration inside the room. But all of your transactions in your business, in your networking, in your partnerships, all of that was happening after the event. It was happening at the parties at night. It was happening in the hallways during the events, during the breaks, during lunch, during breakfast and coffee. Like, that's where all the deals were being done. But of course, I didn't know this. I didn't know this because my story told me something different. See, your perspective is driving and dictating your possibility. The amount of money that you currently make also tells you what's possible. Your current production levels are directly linked up to your current perspective. What you believe is possible, inside of the industry that you're in. For example, if I talk to a business owner and he's sitting there and his vision is, I want to be good and I want to make enough money. It's not a bad perspective. It's not a bad desire. There's nothing wrong or wicked about this. It's fantastic, but it is totally different than when I sit down with an entrepreneur in the same industry and he says, I want to fucking take over this entire category. Like, my perspective and my vision that is possible from that perspective. Because, see, these two things are directly connected. Your perspective is directly connected to your vision. So when I'm sitting in this room and Robert Allen gets up and talks about billions and I talk about millions the way he's talking about billions, our visions were not even close. My vision fit into a Ziploc baggie on the side of his satchel pocket. Why? Because my perspective, based upon my experience, told me that my vision could only be so big. Now, this is not like I could have stood up. If I had stood up and said billions at that time, I'd have been a total fucking hypocrite. Now, almost 20 years into entrepreneurism, running 4 companies, are very successful, multi-million dollar businesses. Inside of this place, what I can tell you, with teams that are highly productive, managing, I've built, I've lost, I've done it, etc., invested, all of these games that are happening, now I can say, okay, if I look at myself from 21 to 41, I'm 41 years old, I'll be 42 years old this summer. I'm 41 years old right now. 20 years I went from college graduate with a degree in PE to what? To what I've built today, living in Orange County, California, running 4 different companies, podcast shows, books, #1 bestsellers, like across the board. Love what I do, love how I live, love my life, etc., right? 20 years it took me to get there. So I'm like, okay, well, 20 years from now, when I'm 61, I will be a billionaire. I have a painting that was made for me. This painting actually sits in my man cave in my office, in my house. My man cave is where my restroom is for myself and my shower with a steam room, which is awesome, which I thought was going to be awesome. I hardly use it at all. But nonetheless, I have the side of the master bedroom that's mine, which is the first time I've ever had a room that was like mine. Like, I was telling my son this. I was trying to help him understand. We dropped him off at college. I was like, hey, son, listen, I need you to understand, Parker. Like, I have my own room for the first time at 41. I never had my own room my whole life. My wife would take over every room in the house. Like, here's my closet. I didn't get anything. I got like 2 drawers. My wife got all the rest. Like, I have like my own lineup of closets. I've got my own setup. Like, I got my own shit. Like, my gear is like I got my own space. But the coolest part about this space is this painting. So last Christmas, I had a gentleman by the name of Brian Nelson, who was a student of ours in Wake Up Warrior. His mother-in-law painted me a painting of myself, which to some is pretty arrogant. They're like, oh my God, a painting of yourself. And I'm like, well, I get where you're coming from. Follow through with where I'm at, though. So she's an artist. She's a painter. She took a photo and then kind of blended, photoshopped a few pictures together. And then she painted me a hand-painted portrait of me, like standing up about knees all the way to the top of my head. I have my beard. I've got my hair. I've got my suit on, my dark suit. Same suit, if you're watching this show, the same suit, style of suit that I have right now. It's not this exact suit, but a style like this. A black suit, white shirt. And she paints this picture. But for some reason, this picture I look older. The hair's a little more gray. The beard's a little more gray. The hands, like the body's a little leaner. Like just the way the painting was painted makes me look like a lot older. My wife thinks it's disgusting. She's like, I hate this picture. It makes you look too old. And I'm like, no, I love it. And I put this picture right up above this like whiteboard desk that I have created, had one of my guys create for me that I put in my office. And I brainstorm shit. I got whiteboards in the man cave. And I got this painting of myself up there. And I look at this painting, and people are like, that's weird, dude. You look at yourself. I was like, dude, you look at yourself every day in the fucking mirror. What are you talking about? Like, we look at ourselves all day long. We're like selfie nation now in the way we take picture of ourselves. So I'm looking at this painting that's been made for me, and this painting speaks to me every morning. Oh, let me back up. Why did I get the painting? I didn't commission the painting. She made the painting for me as a gift of gratitude for restoring order to her daughter's marriage, which happened to be married to Brian Nelson. And so Brian and his wife, they get connected. Their marriage gets on fire. He's been a warrior for a number of years, 2.5 years now. He's one of our certified trainers. And his mother-in-law painted this for me out of gratitude for reestablishing order in that marriage, a marriage that was headed to divorce. And I was sitting there, and so I'm very grateful for the painting. But the painting took on even a deeper meaning for me because the painting itself became this vision for who I was and where I was going. It established for me a new perspective, a new place of power. Now, this happened simultaneously as another experience. So after we moved into our home here in Orange County, California, right on the beach, and it was like a dream home for us. So I could surf every morning, all these things like where I live. It is my ideal place. And I went back we were sitting in New York City, and I was sitting up on top of this I don't remember where we were standing. It was like the towers or something. It was right down off, right in Manhattan. I don't remember exactly where it was, but we're about 45, 50 floors up. And there's this large tower that was standing away from where I was sitting, and it was lit up at night. And it was obviously residential, but it was like super tall. Like it was crazy tall. If you go to New York, you'll be able to see this. I had no idea what this was. It's 2 o'clock in the morning because of the time change. It's 2 o'clock in New York, but I'm not tired because I'm still in California time. And my kids are asleep, my wife's asleep, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking out these glass windows that go 180 degrees in the condo that we're in. And I see this thing rising up. And truth be told, like where I had gotten in business by the time this had happened, I was starting to get a little bored. And boredom is a destructive tool we're going to talk about today also. Boredom causes a man to do stupid shit, like burn things to the ground that are working, cheat on relationships that are working, just do stupid shit, take drugs, do stupid things that businessmen do when they get bored, right? Launch another business because they're bored, right? That's not because they actually have any passion for it. Find a way to piss away the money, invest in bullshit that doesn't make any sense, whatever the case is. So I'm sitting in this situation though, and I know I'm feeling a little bored. I'm feeling bored because I feel like I've accomplished all these targets that I'd set for myself 5 years previously, which I had. I'd shot every single fucking target and passed every single blueprint I had built where I lived, with the home I was in, the amount of cash in my vaults, the amount of money that we were making, the amount of money in the businesses, the number of employees, the experience that I got to have, what I get to do day to day, getting to do this show. My life had become like beyond the blueprint. So I was sitting there depressed because I had lost vision. I have lost vision. And when a man loses vision, he loses perspective. And when he loses perspective, he loses power. You want to see a stagnant businessman? You want to see a stagnant man in business? You show me a man with no vision. Why? Because a man with no vision just shows up and deals with reactionary fires. He doesn't actually create much anymore. He just kind of deals with trying to keep shit the same. is like a prevent defense in football. I was a defensive back at Boise State, played there for a little bit, played in another college called Rick's College, junior college, played in Canada for a little bit, played arena ball for a little bit, did a bunch of little bits, like never had a stellar career. But nonetheless, one thing that always drove me insane was the fact that when we were up on people, they would put in the nickel or dime package, which is they would replace linebackers, they would replace defensive linemen, they would put more DBs on the field. We would typically do this when there was almost no time on the clock, and all there was a Hail Mary. And then we would back way the fuck off the ball. And the offense would have the ball like sitting on like the 10 or 15 yard line. And then we would back way off. Like the corners would be 20 yards off. The safeties would be 25 yards off. Everybody would be just standing back, waiting for the quarterback to just pick us apart. But just, again, the name was prevent. Go into a prevent defense to not allow them to score. Give them yardage. Let them get first downs. Just don't let them fucking score. They got to score a touchdown to tie us. We will not allow them to score a touchdown. We'll let them get first down after first down all they want, but we are not going to let the ball in the end zone. But the scary thing for a defensive back when you're playing in that position is you come out there and you realize that the whole game you've been playing man-to-man, cover 3, cover 4. You've been playing really intense defense, and you've been beating the shit out of the team that you're playing. But all of a sudden, the coaches go to prevent, and now we let in this element of chance that is insane. The lucky catch, the lucky bounce, the tip drill that we practiced so many times at DBs. Tip drill, pick the ball up. Like all these drills that were going on for years in my career from the time I was young in middle school, clear up until the time I got done playing arena ball. Inside of all of that experience, there was this moment of panic as a DB. Because you're like, dude, it is hard as shit to cover a high-flying ball down the field. Like, there is a lot of random shit that can happen that doesn't happen normally when you're locked up on somebody man-to-man. So we would go into prevent, and it would cause us problems. And this is how most businessmen get when they lose vision. Instead of aggressively showing up on the ball, which that's why I loved arena ball, because I was too slow to play corner in college. And then when we got to arena ball, there was a wall. So I got to play corner, which was fantastic. I was fascinated with playing arena. Why? Because I could use the wall and I could put a fucking wide receiver into the front row, which I did. That's how I actually got the crazy name. Utah Blaze used to be a team called the Utah Warriors. That was a team I played for. And that team, like, I loved it. Because I got to play corner and put guys into the fucking front row. I was like, there you go, motherfucker, in the front row with you. Sit with the dude with the 2 beers, because you are not getting around me. Run full speed. Your 4-3 doesn't mean shit to me, because I'm going to put my forearm into your throat and put you over the front rail. So this was like my experience of arena ball, was this aggressive, attacking, very clear vision, very clear objective, very clear outcome, off you go. Prevent defense, though, which there didn't exist prevent defense in arena ball, was too easy. But in outdoor ball and in Canadian ball, there's massive prevent defense. In Canadian, the field gets even wider. It's even crazier. There's 2 safeties on the field, another wide receiver. It's just a shit show. There's so much field to run everywhere. Prevent defense is the man who loses vision. He starts to play not to win, not to lose. Right? When your money game becomes a game of not to lose, you start to play like the primary focus of your productivity is not to lose. Like what I want to create is I'm going to focus on not losing. Now, I'm not talking about protection. Protection moves are smart as hell. I'm not talking about not having protection. I'm not talking about changing shit up for your world to assure your ability to continue to produce. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that the mindset of prevention in a prevent defense is very similar to the mindset of a man who starts to play in business from a place of not wanting to lose. And I've done this. I've played scared in business, just like I played scared in football, just like I've surfed scared. Like when I surf scared, it's a nightmare. Like I don't catch anything. I'm nervous of the waves. I'm scared about drowning. Like there's all this shit that goes on. The swell comes in. It gets bigger than I'm normally used to. Normal waves where I am are between 2 to 4 feet, right? So when the swell comes in and now we're popping 7-foot, 8-foot waves, like it is, if you don't surf, you have no idea. But if you do surf, you get exactly what I'm talking about. Like, it's just a radically different game. The ocean changes and the water becomes more powerful and thick and hollow, and life just becomes a lot more spicy. For me, I started surfing less than a year ago. And so there's this moment where I start to play scared in the water. And when I play scared in the water, I lose every time. I don't surf with confidence. You have to be flexible and loose and relaxed and in flow. And when I'm there, I surf great. And I've had these days where it's like untouchable. And then I've had days where I can't do shit. And business is the same. Business and my perspective. If my perspective is focus all my energy and effort on not losing what I have, and I eliminate my focus on producing more, innovating more, or building vision, I'm done. So there I sat in New York City, sitting in this condo, wife's asleep, kids are asleep, and I'm having these questions. I'm like, shit. I'm like, what am I supposed to do next? Like, the thing I'm doing now, I'm already kind of bored of because we've already built the systems and process in place. I've already replaced myself. I've either automated, systematized, or delegated or deleted the stuff that, was in the way. So now what? Like, I need another vision. And I started to feel this weird helplessness. And so I looked over, just like I'd done with my beach home here 5 years ago, and I asked myself a simple question. I said, who would I have to become to move into that home? Now, it wasn't the exact home. It was the place where I moved into. It was the actual development where I moved into. They were these estate coastal communities right here in Orange County, one of the last brand new ones being built. That was right on the water. It was perfect right on the surf break. Like, it was just everything I could have ever imagined and more. And I asked myself a question 5 years ago. I said, who would I have to become for that to be true? So there I am sitting there that night in New York, and I look across at 432 Park Avenue. I didn't know that's what I was looking for. I pulled my cell phone out and I Googled, what is the tall building in Manhattan? And it pulled up 432 Park Avenue. Condos halfway up that thing, sitting on the 60th floor, are around $25 million. The penthouse is 89 or 85 million or something like that. $85 million. There's two of them. One faces east and one faces west. And the condos on the top floor, the penthouse split somehow, kind of the game. They kind of have like an integrated game going on, but like $89 million. And I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself the question, all right, well, who would I have to become 4 years from now to move into that condo and have a place in New York and a place where I live? Now, if you're unfamiliar with price of property, we look at a $23 million condo, you're looking at a very different, this is not just, hey, I'm going to go get a new house. You're looking at a totally different game, because then that puts me in a place of having two homes of that stature on two different locations in two different sides of the country, and I'm just not there. People say, Garrett, do you have jets? I was like, I don't have jets, man. I'm not there yet. I don't have that yet, but I'm on the path to figure out who I'd have to become. And so I'm sitting there and I get this new vision that instills with me and Warrior Wealth and the war on Wall Street. And I thought, man, I've been in financial services for 7 to 8 years. I loved every second of it. And yet I was sitting there that night and a new vision was given to me. A new vision was instilled in my mind and my heart that invigorated me just like I had 5 years before. That led me to the creation of Wake Up Warrior, led me to the creation of everything we do inside of all of the branch off companies of Wake Up Warrior. That was born in 2012. The idea hit my mind. I need to do this because it's what I've been doing. I need to do this. And so there I'm sitting in New York and a new vision was given to my mind. And it reinvigorated me. It launched this podcast, Warrior Wealth. It launched the acquisition of 2 different insurance companies. It launched the direction of my world into a new trajectory that opened up a whole nother branch of business partnerships and opportunities. It reunited me with a whole lot of guys from my past who I was in banking and investing with back in the day. All of this started to open up again, and I had a new sense of purpose and a new perspective that was linked up to and symbolized by this condo at about 65 floors up that's around $28 million on 432 Park Avenue. And I mark my fucking words. That condo, just like the home I have in Orange County on the beach where I surf every morning, that condo will happen. I will have offices here in Orange County. I will have offices in New York City and Manhattan. And we will go back and forth with a company jet to pull this shit off, back and forth. Company and teams there, company and teams here, back and forth. And people hear this and are like, dude, you're arrogant as fuck. And I'm like, fuck you. It has nothing to do with arrogance. It has to do with a willingness to grow and a desire to grow. And this is the perspective that produces more wealth than any perspective on the planet and in the game for a businessman. Is the perspective of power that comes from having a vision that consumes you. The challenge that you have, challenge that many of you have, is your vision's too small. So you want to do all this big shit. You want to make all this money. You want to build these empires. You want to make all this financial prosperity rain from the heavens. But your power is lacking because your vision is weak. Let me repeat myself. Your power is lacking because your vision is weak. See, my vision is what allows me to double down and invest in employees, team members, software, tools. It allows me to invest millions of dollars into software protocol, into team members. Today alone, I will hire 4 new people. Today, we will sign contracts of 4 new team members today. 3 high-level executives coming into my company conglomerate, as well as 1 individual coming on with our customer support. And people say, how do you make these kinds of decisions? I said, well, I don't make them based upon what the economics say right now. I make them based upon the vision and the economics of who we're going to become. I don't build my business based upon who we are now. Every day I'm living in who we are now, but my vision is what sets the frame and gives me the power to play the game. This is why I run the show. Because even some of my most deep and intimate partners inside of the game, individuals who are like, dude, man, we're fucking really rattling cages, man. We're really rolling right now. I don't know. This podcast, I built this studio built, and we launched 4, not 1, we launched 4 consecutive podcasts at the same time. At Christmas time, when I was having this studio built, people were like, dude, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. They're like, man, you invested in this thing. Like the cameras alone, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 $4,000 cameras in this room. This studio build out with all of the stuff that we have going on. This entire studio was around $85,000 to $100,000 to build this out. That may not be a lot of money to you. It may not be, it's not a lot of money to me. It was worth it inside of it. It may be a ton of money to you, but I did it because I had a vision for where these shows would go. I had a vision that was born in that hotel room, in that condo at 2 o'clock in the morning. So when they said, well, Garrett, I need some cameras. I'm like, well, dude, I want cameras in here because I want to do video, I want to do audio, and I want to do text of these shows. I want to be able to people to read them, I want them to watch them, and I want to listen to them. So I hire 2 new team members to just support with just the podcast. We come in and we build all the technology. We buy all the software. We buy all the tools. We build this system where I can remotely, with this remote that you can see right now, can control my camera angle so that you can watch this on YouTube or Facebook or wherever else you're watching it. I had a vision that justified the investment. Without the vision, everything I'm doing right now doesn't make sense. If my vision is just simply pay my bills, if my vision is just simply save some money, if that's my vision is to just do those things, I would never be where I am right now. And so people will look at me and they're like, well, Garrett, that's you're taking a lot of risks, Garrett. And I was like, no. You see risk. You see risk. But I'm investing in me. I'm my number one asset. I trust me. When there's 3 seconds on the clock, I'm not fucking passing the rock. Give me the fucking ball. I'm shooting. I'm shooting with 3 seconds left. I believe in myself. I trust myself as a businessman. I trust my ability to problem solve. Do you? Do you? Do you trust yourself? Do you trust your key team members? Do you trust yourself? Like 3 seconds left. Are you passing the rock or are you shooting it? And there's the bullshit side of you that's like, oh yeah, I'll shoot it. And then there's the real side of you that's like, fuck it, I'm passing. I don't care where you're at on it. You need to get real with yourself. Like, where are you legitimately? Are you acting as a CEO? Do you have vision? Do you have perspective that is coming from you that oozes and emanates power to your people? Do your team members feel that they are part of something bigger, moving on a movement, heading forward? Do your clients feel like they are part of something bigger with you? Do people align with you, and are they willing to sacrifice what they currently have right now and walk away from it to be part of something that is bigger because your vision swallows up the world that they live in and that vision becomes their vision? What I didn't tell you about the 3 individuals that are signing with me today is all 3 of these individuals are successful business owners. All of them making around $500,000 to $700,000 a year. They are successful at what they do. And they are shutting their businesses down, selling them, and joining me inside of this game. And people are like, well, Garrett, why? Why would someone do this? In my salons, our lead artists across the board in all of our salons used to run their own businesses. They were successful. They trained with us. They were making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they collapsed their businesses. They closed their salons. They moved to Orange County. They joined us on our teams, and people are like, how do you keep getting people to do this? I was like, number one, I'm not getting people to do shit. When you are clear about a vision, there is a power that comes out of you. When you are clear about a perspective upon possibility, when you are clear as a leader, when you are clear as a businessman, when you are clear as a man who takes a stand, what you'll notice is people want to come follow. And not just like little pawns from the street. I'm not talking about like the would-be has-beens. I'm not talking about picking up a team on Groupon. I'm talking about elite players that want to play with you because they see the vision. And so Robert Allen stood up that day and he shared something, and he shared billions. And I thought, who the fuck is this guy? I asked all the wrong questions. The question I should have been asking is, why can't I see it? Why can't I see it? So 2006, I'm sitting out on a boat, a Mastercraft X80, out in a small little lake in Utah called Bear Lake. My in-laws had a cabin out there. We would go there over the summer. They sold it since then because everybody stopped going out there. But we went out there when we were first married. We'd go out there a bunch. 2006, I'm sitting out on a boat with a man by the name of Mark Eldridge, who owned Eldridge Construction. He was a construction homeowner, a home builder. His business did between 30 to 40 million a year. He was very successful at what he had done. He'd been doing this for 25 to 30 years. Very successful man, but Mark was dying. He had oxygen on to help him with his breathing. He had contracted a degenerative disease inside of his lungs. Like there was no healing. There was no way to stop what was happening. Like there was nothing that could be done to deal with what he was doing except for just endure. And so he spent almost every waking hour with his children and his wife. They just spent an incredible amount of time together. And he and I, for some reason, whatever the case was, had found ourselves sitting out on this boat, this Mastercraft X80, awesome ski boat, wakeboard boat. We're sitting out on the lake, and we're having this conversation back and forth, him and I. And the night before, we got in a bit of an argument and a debate about Tony Robbins, and I don't even remember why we were arguing. We're arguing about something. I was being an arrogant prick, I'm sure. At the time, I was in my 20s, my late 20s. And I was 28 or 29 years old when this happened. And he looks at me and he says, we're talking about real estate, and he says, listen, sell everything. All your real estate, sell it. Sell it and go to cash. He's like, I have lived through this game many times. He's like, a shit show is coming. He's like, sell everything you have and go to cash. And I sat and listened to him, and I believed him. Like, I believed him. But I lacked the perspective to understand what he was talking about. And it sounds like you're sitting there like, Garrett, how the fuck do you misunderstand what he's talking about? It was very clear. Sell all your properties and go to cash and hold. Right? It was a very simple instruction. But my perspective had never, ever experienced major loss. Never. I was an entrepreneur for the first round. I had never experienced loss before. True loss. Like massive shifts in economies and markets that cascade tsunamis of chaos into your businesses. I'd never had to have mass layoffs. I'd never had to do any of that. Like I had zero experience on the downside. And that is why I love my 20-something and my early 30-something entrepreneurs. I love you guys. Your little hustle and your get after it and your first time pass at this game. Like I love it, but it's hard for me to trust you. Do you want to know why? It's hard for me to trust you because you've never experienced the pain of being completely destroyed. And so there's an arrogance that comes with having never lost. There's an arrogance that comes without having ever experienced that depth of pain. An arrogance that comes without having ever been in a situation where you literally cannot put groceries in the fridge for your family and your wife is looking at you with desperation in her eyes and you have no fucking answers. See, it's hard. It's hard when that is a memory that you have, when your cards do not work, when your debit cards are shut down, your credit cards are shut down, when your economic life goes to ruin, and then you must rebuild from that hell. Those are men that I trust. I trust men who have built, lost, and rebuilt. Do you know why? Because these men have a healthy respect for others' perspectives. They have a healthy respect for mentors, advice, and counsel. They have learned how I did very painfully to learn. Now, am I saying that a man has to be totally destroyed to pull this off? No, I'm certain that there are some elite unicorns who can pull this off without doing it. But what I can tell you is that day Mark told me some of the most important advice I could ever get, and I listened to nothing of what he said. Mark would pass away the next year. And the year after that, my entire empire would be demolished. And it wasn't destroyed because of the real estate bust. It wasn't destroyed because of the banking crisis. It wasn't destroyed because of anything else except for I was arrogant as fuck. And I lacked the perspective. I had gotten to a place where I thought I had arrived. And the most challenging piece of being a businessman when you feel like you have arrived is you stop listening to people. I'm not telling you need to listen to everybody. Most people you need to tell to fuck off. Like their advice, their counsel, their perspective on life is total bullshit. But there are people who are trying to get into your world, help you see things that you are not listening to because your perspective is linked up to a contraction of your power. It's not letting you open up to possibility because your perspective is too small. Your vision is too small. You lack vision in yourself. You lack vision for your business. You lack vision for your teams. You lack vision for your clients. You lack vision about where you are taking the fucking ship, Captain, El Capitan. And this is why we say the number one asset in your entire business life is you. Do you know why? Because you are the container of the vision. You cannot outsource this shit. You cannot outsource your vision. Your vision is your power. Your power and your vision give you the courage to execute. They give you the courage to produce. They give you the courage to not slow down. I got a text this morning from one of my team. He said, I think should we do this and this? Should we lay this person off? And then should we back off of this? I said, we're not only not going to lay that person off. We are not going to slow down the ad spend over on these areas. We're not doing either of those things. We're going to do the opposite, which is we're going to increase the ad spend and we're going to hire another person. This team member went, meditated, came back, said, thank you. I was feeling scared and nervous. I was like, of course you were, man. That's why I'm here. I get it. My vision will not be broken by the temporary attack of today. The vision that I instill inside my teams, the vision I instill inside of me, the vision I instill inside of my clients, that vision is my victory. And so I can sit here and talk to you about marketing. I'm going to be in Orlando, Florida, training 3,000 entrepreneurs on marketing here in less than 5 weeks. I get brought in and train on marketing and sales and systems and automation and teams and leadership and brand building. We run big events, Warrior Wealth Summits, Warrior Business and Leadership Summits. I train on this shit, but I will come back to the game always at the core, which is if you have no power as a leader, you cannot expect your business to rise. And if it does, it will slowly die. You will not sustain it. It cannot be sustained. You will not be able to maintain the game because your own brain is the problem. And you will find a way to fuck it up. How do you think I know? Because I did it. Not once, not twice. I did it over and over and over again. I did it so many times. 7 different companies. And I thought the problem was a marketing problem. I thought the problem was a sales problem. I thought the problem was an accounting problem. I thought the problem was team problems. All those can be problems. But at the end of the day, I realized the biggest problem was I was a huge liability. I was not the number one asset to the business. I was the number one liability to the business. Do you realize that this is the truth? Take a look at your current business right now. You are the number one asset in that business. You are the number one liability in that business. And depending on the day and how you choose to play, you show up as either an accelerator of the wealth of your company or you show up as a decelerator of the wealth of that company. Your bottom line profits and your revenues are directly linked to your capacity as a man, your capacity as a leader, your capacity as a visionary. And if you find that your capacity has contracted, And if you find that your power has gotten weak, it always comes down to two things. You forgot you were your number one asset. You stopped living the warrior's way. You stopped committing to the daily power routines. You stopped doing core four. You stopped doing the stack. You stopped doing all the things that allow a man to be productive and powerful. All the things that you can learn about by investing in the Warrior Book by heading to warriorbook.com. It's a blatant pitch. It's a blatant pitch because it's a book that works. It's a book that 10,000 plus men now read and study, businessmen just like you, who have found the access point to power on a daily basis. And from that power, have begun to find new vision for their lives, new vision for their teams, new vision for their companies, new vision. And that new vision inspires the actions of productivity in marketing, sales, systems, accounting, leadership, automation, and across the board, all of the elements of your business in mind must have fuel, and the fuel for that comes from you. And so we may sit here all day long and tell you that your 401k plan is a fucking horseshit strategy. We may sit here and tell you the stock market is a complete bullshit strategy. You are a businessman. You do not invest in other people's businesses. You invest in your own business. Your number one investment is your business, and other people can invest in your business, but your direction is to invest in your own business. I do not take my profits and give it to another man's business. I take my profits and I build my own businesses. If you want to invest in my business, fine. But my strategy as a businessman is to do the opposite, which means I am going to invest in the one thing I can control, which is I'm going to invest in the businesses that I give a shit about. I'm not looking for some magical ATM, nor am I looking for somebody to step in and save me. You cannot hire a chief visionary officer for your company. You are the fucking visionary for the company. Are you kidding me? But you won't do this if your perspective tells you otherwise. You won't understand what Robert Allen says when he says billions. And I didn't understand that here 13 years ago. I was not the kind of man who could grasp what he was talking about. I was not the kind of person and man inside of a business that had the vision and the capacity and the skill sets and the mindsets to push forward. I was not the kind of man whose emotional IQ was high enough to actually sustain the game. And so our final thought here as we kind of roll in the last 8 minutes of this show is this. Robert Kiyosaki shared a principle that I started off today's show with, which was this idea of emotional IQ. He said one of the greatest challenges back in my very first few years studying business, and I'll remember forever and ever and ever, and now I'm sharing it with you. He said one of the greatest challenges you're going to face is your emotional IQ or your emotional quotient of dealing with growth and leadership and money. Because there is an emotional side to the game of building wealth that people do not talk about. It is not discussed in deep circles where production is the focus. There's no talk about you being your number one asset or number one liability. There's no talk about how do you deal with the stress and the emotions. There's execution talk. There's delivery talk. There's you need to build this. You need to hire this person. You need to do this thing. So there's this direction that comes into play. And there's this understanding of tactics that comes into play, but there's very little conversation about the emotion required to pull this off. So I'm sitting there at this event, and Robert Kiyosaki is sharing this, and he said there's your financial IQ, which is your knowledge of money, which again comes down to the production side, which will be next week's show. Right? So production, there's the knowledge of money, which is the knowledge of production, but then there's the knowledge of emotion, which is the knowledge of power. And so we have these two different knowledges that you must have. A financial IQ, which is your understanding of the key levers and movers and shakers of making, keeping, and growing money. Okay, that is all of our next show inside of production. But then there is this one that precedes that show, which is the show we're having today on the topic of power, which is your emotional quotient must be aligned. Your emotional stability must be aligned. And that emotion is linked up directly to your capacity to produce. lose control of your emotions, lose control of your business. Lose control of your emotions, lose control of your teams. Lose control of your emotions and panic under pressure because you don't have fucking control of your own emotions as a businessman. You cannot bring yourself grounded. You lose your mind. Then what you do is what I did for the first 10 years. You build and you burn. 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 And you stay stuck in this karmic loop. This karmic loop of insanity that has you continue to build shit only to know that you're going to burn it, not because the business needs to be burnt, but you burn it because you cannot sustain the heat inside of the fire of your own desire. What you're building overwhelms you. And inside of that overwhelm, your emotional levels of your emotional quotient, your EQ is too low. I would say that probably 60% of the shit I deal with on a day-to-day basis is dealing with the emotions of my teams, my clients, and my people. Just keeping people on point. The end. But here's the crazy part. If you're not on point, how the fuck are you going to keep anybody else on point? This morning when my teams sent me the message they sent me, I knew that there was two things. One, I knew they hadn't meditated yet. And two, I was coming directly out of a float tank, which was I was coming straight out of a deprivation chamber where you float in Epsom salt. If you don't know what that is, you can check it out. A company I go to is Float Easy here in Orange County. But I'm in the deprivation tank, and I'm coming straight out of this thing for an hour of floating and meditating and connecting with myself and connecting with my vision and connecting with where I'm going. I do this every day, Monday through Friday. And I came straight out of that to a whole barrage of texts, 17 different text messages from 17 different team members, all with different issues, different topics, etc. And I see these topics, and I'm literally rapid firing back to everyone. Boom, 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 boom. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing. I was clear. So I didn't take on the emotion that they were having. They were having the emotional experience. I was not taking that emotion on. That emotion was going on for them. That emotion was not going on for me. That emotion was going on for them. And because it was going on for them, I was in a condition as a leader, I was in a space where my capacity was greater so I could have clearer vision on what was actually happening. They were stuck in the ditch. Now, two of them went back and meditated, came back to me later and said, man, thanks so much for holding power and space and that because I was panicking a little bit. I hadn't meditated yet. I meditated now. I can totally see what's going on. I got this. I was like, I know. Your capacity is constricted. The next round of power, we'll talk about meditation. And we're going to talk about a tool called the Stack and how these two tools, here you'll hear that show 4 weeks from now when we go to power again, why meditation is actually super crucial to the prospect of being able to build business. That being able to get yourself grounded as a man not only helps you as a husband, not only helps you as a father, but helps you as a businessman to make clear decisions and to make them quickly and efficiently. But it's your lack of connection, it's your lack of space, it's your lack of emotional power that actually holds you back from being able to build the business and build the direction and build the profitability that you desire. And that is because you have confused what your number one asset is and you have confused what your number one investment is. And at this point, if you've been listening to these shows, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You are your number one asset. Your business is your number one investment. Stop putting your fucking money in other people's businesses. Stop buying stocks. Stop buying mutual funds. Stop buying shit that you don't understand. Stop investing. If real estate is not your primary business, then get the fuck out. If you are not a primary currency trader, then get out of currency. You need to be involved in two games every single day. Invest in my number one asset. Invest in my number one strategy. Invest in myself. Invest in my business. Invest in myself. Invest in my business. Build the empire. And all of this today comes around this idea of power, but specifically your emotions and the lack of control that you may or may not have with them that are always irrefutably linked to the clarity of the vision that you currently possess inside. But not just the clarity of that vision inside, but the clarity of being able to take that vision and share that vision directly with your team in a way that allows your team to get it and your team to understand it and your team to buy it, hook, line, and sinker. My friends, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you being here on the Warrior Wealth Podcast. This is episode number 6. We're coming to a close on. And next week, I'll be back with the topic of production. We're actually going to jump into specifically the power of marketing inside of communicating a message. I'm going to begin to unroll for you the strategic seduction training that up till now has only been available inside of my high-level programs here at Wake Up Warrior. I'm going to start sharing those piece by piece every week. We're going to share a little bit of them next week. Inside of that, we're going to specifically talk about the power of communicating a message and why, as a businessman, if you cannot communicate a message clearly inside of your marketing, inside of your advertising, then you are fucked when it comes to increasing productivity. And we're going to also discuss how that communication strategy actually applies directly to your ability to also lead your people. So we've got a big schedule up for next week. Thank you so much for being here. Would love a couple things from you here. If you are getting value from this show, would love you to review this show and any of the platforms that you'll find it on. If you head over to iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and soon to be on Spotify, leave us a review. Let everybody know what you think about the show. Share the show with somebody else. Would also love to get your feedback from the show by heading to warriorwealthnow.com, where you'll be able to find the key action guides, show notes for this. Again, for this show as well as all of our other shows, you can see the video version of the show with me here in studio. You can listen to it, read it. We've got a whole lot of tools and resources over there for you. My friends, final word here. If you are a man, a businessman inside of this game, you're getting value from this conversation. One of the first places that we would encourage you to start is with the book called Warrior Book. By heading to warriorbook.com, making a $100 investment in yourself, let us send you the manual and the guide to ultimately understanding what's inside of you, but also the science, the gamification, the system that from your mobile device, every single day you can learn to live and play the Warrior's Way with myself and 10,000 plus men from 27 different countries. We'd love to have you too. My friends, that's all I got for you. This is Garrett J signing off with this week's Warrior Wealth Podcast saying good morning, good afternoon, and good night.